What is going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk to you about SoFi. I want to go over some expectations for this upcoming week, what might cause some volatility in the stock price, and go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up. And with that, let's get right to it. So starting off with macro data, not really that much coming out on Monday. So that's going to be more of a technical driven day. And SoFi's technicals I'll cover near the end of the video. Tuesday, we have the dreaded CPI and then a couple of Fed speakers as well throughout the week. So that in among itself could cause some volatility. Then Thursday, PPI, retail sales, and Michigan consumer sentiment on Friday. So all of those data points in the past have really shown that they can move the market. So definitely a lot of volatility is anticipated through these data points, and companies unveiling the earnings, nothing really significant that's going to impact the market. So it is going to be more of a, like I said, technical driven week. There isn't really any fireside chats or anything planned associated to SoFi, although there was one piece of news that did come out on Friday that could really start to impact SoFi in the next couple weeks, and that is this right here. So SoFi was added to the MSCI index, and so this is a huge catalyst. Oddly enough, I don't really see that many people kind of talking about it, but it looks like Rocket Lab, SoFi, and Affirm were added to this index. And so essentially, based on this, over 1,400 equity ETFs are linked to the MSCI indexes. So that does and will result in a lot of institutions being forced to buy SoFi. So that's something that I've kind of complained about in the last couple of videos. It's just very, very low volume. It's not just SoFi though, it's across the board, but this could kind of stimulate that a little bit. So again, that's kind of a good thing, and hopefully get it above a key resistance level that's been somewhat struggling with. But looking at shorts going into this upcoming week, 10.27% of the free floats being shorted, works to be 120.96 million shares overall are being shorted. I honestly don't really see that much activity coming from them, and over the last 2 weeks, they have not really done all that much. I think last Friday when they increased 226,000 shares, that was them making a big move. So most likely they will continue to return, especially if the data points, CPI, PPI, and so forth are good, then yeah, most likely they will continue to return. And a lot of the data points, on a side note, are going to really further validate a 25 basis point cut for the September and then a following 25 basis point cut for the October meetings. So that's going to be a huge catalyst for the broader market, but anticipate shorts to kind of go back and forth between like 200,000 shares increasing and returning. Nothing really crazy, but aside from that, from the bulls standpoint, looking at the options, you see a consensus for it to be roughly around that $22 to $23 range. Then the bears are anticipating for it to be sub kind of 22. So at the end of the day, with us closing at 22.11, that does mean that there's a lot more upside anticipated, which is always a good thing. Of course, with last Friday, it closing at the exactly 22.10 or 22.11 after hours, I guess, that does mean that the $22 strike prices and below are considered in the money. So you have 13,000 at that 22, 7,000, 21.50, 5,000 at the 21. So not really too much in reality. So it works out to be about just over 2 million shares that do need to be covered. So there was some transactions that did occur after hours on Friday that most likely was market makers covering. So this one was 344,000 shares. This one was 305. So most likely you'll see a little bit of a bump up come Monday, but what we've seen over the last 2 Mondays is that market makers don't immediately cover it on Monday. They start doing it on Tuesday and random transactions throughout the week. So I think in reality, market makers are trying to, this might be speculation, but market makers clearly want to suppress SoFi in some capacity. So let me know your thoughts on that in the comments below. Aside from that though, with it closing at 22.10, it is right below this pivot point. So currently between this pivot and this S1, so 2047 is going to be a strong support. 2226 is going to be the next strong target / resistance. And this is something I did mention over the last 2 videos that SoFi really needs to get above if you're going to see a nice kind of push higher to that 24, 25, and so forth. On Friday, it did break above that twice, and actually as well during the pre-market, but shorts that's probably why they did actually wake up a little bit. They tried to suppress it below this pivot point. So 22.26 is going to be that key point to really watch for it to get over early on in the week if you're going to see that nice push to 24.04 and then 25.15. Elliott Wave Technicals, on a side note, does have a pivot point of $20.68, and for as long as SoFi is above that, then in theory it is anticipated to get between that 24.57 and 25.56 in the short term. So Elliott Wave Technicals is looking pretty good. There hasn't been any new analyst ratings. You never know, there might be one or two that pop up this upcoming week, still a little bit delayed, but adjusting for their earnings. So again, we'll kind of wait and see. And I think a lot of the bearish ones are very strategic with their timing. So the most recent one was a $14 sell, then you have a $6 sell. Kind of crazy if you ask me, but all the bears have pretty much given their ratings from SoFi's earnings, still remaining bearish, kind of comical, but there's four main ones. So KBW, Compass Point, Morgan Stanley, and Bank of America. A lot of SoFi competitors. So kind of interesting for that. But when it comes down to SoFi on the actual chart itself, like I said, throughout the week, it is going to be kind of moved based on a lot of data points, but ultimately it is going to be a technical driven week. And in SoFi's case, it is successfully, as of Thursday, getting back above that ALMA, showing signs that it wants to push higher. So that's kind of a good thing. But moral of the story, again, watch for that 22.26. Going into this upcoming week, it is considered very oversold based on the stochastic RSI. So if there is some good data points that do come out that further validate a cut, then you could see that nice push higher. One thing as well that could throw a wrench into a lot of the broader market is Trump talking about tariffs. So there's still a lot of outstanding kind of items such as India and Europe that we haven't really heard too much about. So that potentially could resurge this upcoming week. And on a broader standpoint, S&P is right now at 63.89. So that is something that it was kind of struggling with a little bit at that 63.50, and that's what I mentioned previously was a key point that I really needed to get above. But right now, it's kind of, market doesn't really know what to do, right? Market doesn't know if we have good enough catalyst to really push higher or if it's time for consolidation. So we're kind of stuck in that limbo. So if Trump throws some wrenches in and it kind of pushes the market below that 63.50, we might go on to a little bit more of a consolidation stage. So again, something to just keep in mind on a broader scope that of course could influence SoFi. So nonetheless, I do feel by the end of this week, things will move higher and it will trade between this R2 and this R1. So 24.04 will be that kind of strong support. Most likely it'll be gravitating towards that 24. I don't really see that 25 being touched just yet, but nonetheless, let me know your thoughts and where you see things going in the short term. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up. Hopefully everyone's having an amazing weekend. And then one final thing, pop over to my Patreon if you're looking for some solid buy signals on stocks, options, crypto, many of which have been absolutely on point. Definitely worthwhile to pop over there and take a look. With all that said, appreciate all of you watching.